1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue podcast sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hello and welcome to the Royal Blue podcast. It's the Wednesday show on a Thursday, and Everton.
I was going to say.
Everton have won a game of football. We are live, and I am your host, Ian Croll. Joining me in the Royal Blue studio today, we have Joe Thomas. Joe, how are things? All good?
Really pleased to see you smiling.
Give me a high five. Give me a high five.
Football friends.
How are things, Joe? All good?
A lot better after last night, yeah.
It certainly is. We've also got Chris Beesley. Chris, how are things? All good?
I'm all right.
I want a high five, Chris.
No.
Give us a high five.
I was going to go in for the old traditional handshake with you, old Everton dad I am.
There you go. How are things, Chris? All good?
Yeah, okay.
Good.
Better.
Good. Well, as you can see, the mood has certainly lifted in the Royal Blue studio today. Everton win 4-0 against Wolves, against a relegation rival.
Wow.
The agenda today will obviously be dominated by Everton's 4-0 win over Wolves. We might even give a little Merseyside derby prediction from Chris, because Chris is not on tomorrow's show.
No escape from me from that one.
Yeah, so definitely no escape. So we'll see how that one goes. As always, give this video a thumbs up, drop us a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. As mentioned, we are live, so get your comments in on the stream. Joe, we'll start with you. Initial reaction first. I'll be totally honest, I wasn't expecting a 4-0 win. It looks convincing. It looked like a drubbing. Was it the case?
Yes and no, in a weird contradictory answer. Everton deserved to win yesterday. Wolves collapsed. Probably what I hope, I don't want to start this with whataboutery or anything else. I hope that when they're back in at Finch Farm today, and I hope that they don't gloss over the fact that Wolves had some very, very big chances at some very big moments in that game. Yeah. This was a game that Everton needed to start well, and they very easily could have gone 1-0 down after 90 seconds with that ball pulled back to Jørgen Strand Larsen. So hopefully there will be some kind of, oversight paid to that today, and fixing that ahead of the derby, because Liverpool won't be quite so forgiving in front of goal. But obviously, once Everton got over that start, they took their chances, they made the most of the opportunities, and the best thing for me about yesterday was this is a side that I have felt in recent weeks has almost reverted back to where it was perhaps in the final days of Frank Lampard, where in recent games we've seen actually they started pretty well, and what happens is the minute something unusual happens in a game, they can't respond to it. So, like, for instance, against Brentford, even though it was a positive one, they couldn't take advantage of playing against 10 men, even though it should have been, made their lives a bit easier. Against Manchester United, obviously you had the Jarrad Branthwaite own goal at the start, and then they just couldn't figure out how to respond to that. And yes, they got that first goal for Ashley Young, but Goodison was still a bit nervous. I think everybody is scarred by what we've already seen this season with comeback defeats and things like that. Nobody was going to get complacent, which is why the celebrations after the Tarkowski goal was so, incredible, because all of a sudden everyone was like, maybe 2-0 against lowly Wolves, maybe we can finally breathe a sigh of relief and watch this game, which is why the anger was, Goodison see with such anger when it was disallowed so madly after that. But this time, rather than have a setback and not fail to react to it, Everton just kept going, and they kept going. They got a second, and then they kept going. They were hungry for more. They were driven. Felt like they had the confidence to take advantage of the situation that presented itself. They deserved to win. They scored a lot of goals. They've kind of banished a few demons for the time being. This doesn't make anything that we've been saying about the last few weeks wrong or anything like that. It can't be used to paper over the cracks that still exist in the side. But there's no doubt this was a very, very big win, come at a very good time, and we should all be very, very happy about it.
Absolutely, Chris. Your initial reaction. Let's have your say. I mean, Joe said there. Don't think it was a vintage display by any means, but it was probably closer to what you'd expect from a Sean Dyche side, and we won 4-0. You know, you literally can't complain.
Yeah, I don't know where Sean Dyche and Everton would have gone if they'd have lost that game last night. It would have been in horrible territory, but thankfully they didn't, and they won emphatically, I think, as Gav Buckland has pointed out. And the first time in their history, they've gone from losing a league game 4-0 to winning 1-4-0 and an 8-goal turnaround in a matter of days. So, yeah, as Joe said there, despite being emphatic, Wolves did have those big opportunities when the game was still in the balance. But yeah, again, following on from the point that he makes, it was that response to what came in front of them in terms of meeting those challenges. Instead of going back into their shells or retreating, that they kept going. You know, the triumph against adversity with Tarkowski's goal being ruled out, and of course there was the other one later as well for Ndiaye. Another one that seemed a bit soft. We can talk about that. Could have gone either way, bit of a grey area. But yeah, I heard what Gary O'Neill had to say after the game. I was on away manager duties, and yeah, he wasn't impressed. There's a piece out there when he talks about Everton's tactics and the fact that he felt they didn't have to do anything out of the ordinary to get that result. Obviously, that hurts him as Wolves manager, but it must have been really refreshing for Sean Dyche to hear, you know, the chance of you getting sacked in the morning, and that was Gary O'Neill, not himself. A huge result for him, a huge result for the team, and we all know, given those December fixtures that were always going to be on the horizon, it was absolutely pivotal that they got that result and had that buffer between themselves and the bottom three going into the rest of those fixtures, because hopefully there can be some more feel-good factor coming this month in terms of the takeover being completed and all that will go with that.
Absolutely. Well, get your questions in and get your comments in, keep them coming in, because I will read them out. We've got plenty of time today to do so. Joe, we know what's around the corner with the next 4 fixtures. It's not going to be easy by any means, but obviously it's so vital that we got the win yesterday. With everything that's gone on over the past couple of weeks, you know, the poor run, lack of goals, you know, the defeat obviously to United as well. Pressure was obviously building on Sean Dyche. Do you see this as like a stay of execution for the manager, or was this all, you know, part of the plan?
Well, I think this was Dyche in a nutshell. I think if you look at his record at Everton, like, it's, with the exception of April earlier this year when he had those 5 wins on the bounce. Was it 5 wins on the bounce? What's 5 wins?
You finished the season with 5 home wins on the bounce.
5 home wins on the bounce, wasn't it? You know, it's not a story of. It doesn't tend to be a story of consistently picking up wins or 1 win, 1 defeat. What tends to happen is he just gets just enough out of this side. They win the games they really need to. Like, I think, you know, Burnley 1-0 at the start of that April. They just really need to get those. Like Bournemouth earlier on the season when they won 3-0. You look at previous season and obviously the Bournemouth one, and season before that the Brighton win. And he just has that knack of just kind of getting Everton the right side of a line, just doing enough. And okay, that might be uninspiring, but for all the debate around Dyche's future and, you know, whether he should still be in the job now, let alone until the end of the season or even going further forward, I think one thing that we always have to give him credit for is the fact that he's always got Everton just about over the line. And probably there's a degree in which context and perspective matters on this, because obviously, you know, it's completely fair for supporters to want more than Everton just doing enough to get by until they get to the new stadium. That is, of course, fair enough. But from Dyche, with the resources that he's had and the off-field factors that he's had to manage, he's probably looking at this. Well, he's not probably. He is looking at this, and he's thinking it's not, you know, trying to push up the table. It's just doing the bare minimum is to make sure you stay above 3 sides, and he's doing enough on that. So I think this was just a vindication of Dyche, perhaps just showing how he has that canny knack of just about getting enough from this team when they really need it, and all of a sudden it changes the perspective a little bit for December, because had Everton lost that game, they would have been in the bottom 3, and I think given that it would have marked the continuation of a bad run of form, and given the fixtures that are coming up, I don't think it's controversial to say it might have been a difficult relegation zone to get out of this month at least. You know, things would probably get worse before they get better. We can understand why you'd think that. Instead, we now have the flip side of that, and there's a 5-point gap to Wolves because of this. And you go the other way now, and you say, well, even if December goes true to form for Everton, and they come up against these 4 sides who are all in good form, and no matter how well they play, if Everton were to lose them all, Wolves or Ipswich have still got to find 2 wins or 6 points to get above them. So now all of a sudden you go and you say, well, actually, there's probably a decent chance here that Everton, even if they don't win any more, even if they lose the upcoming games, as we fear is a possibility, they probably aren't in the bottom 3 at Christmas, and that's massive. That's massive. And I think it's massive for the club as well because, this club is in paralysis, it's in limbo whilst it's waiting for the takeover, and really it just wants to get to the end of the season. I think that the Freakins would, if they could, I think they would rather just leave it to the end of the season so they get in, get their feet under the carpet, assess everything. Personally, I still think the director of football is the most important job that they need to sort from the footballing perspective. Obviously, there's a huge amount that they need to do from the the business side and the boardroom side. But the more they can kind of just carry on with the status quo and hopefully stability in the dugout, the more time it gives them to kind of put their plans in place. Nobody really wants to be hurried into having to fast-track plans. Like, if you want to bring in a project manager, as I think the Freakins may well do, well, there's a very big difference between bringing him in the summer when Everton have got a big change of playing staff because so many players are out of contract, and you have the release of pressure because you're not in the season, and you've got the brand new move to the new stadium coming up, and you can start with positivity. You don't really want to bring a project manager into the middle of a relegation battle against the 4 best sides in the league. Because that's a nightmare. You could end up in a situation where they're all their job is on the line before they've even had the chance to lay any foundations, and all of a sudden the project that you might have had in mind for the last 6 months or so is in tatters, and you're back to kind of going to and fro. So I think for Dyche, this was Dyche doing what he always does, which is just about enough. I think he deserves credit for that. Got the win where he needed to, and I think it sets Everton up for a much better December than I think we perhaps hoped for. Perhaps expected, rather than hoped for. So obviously it's a much needed shot of confidence going into the derby and this tricky run of fixtures. As for stay of execution, I wrote at the weekend how Dyche is probably facing a losing battle. He's got to convince. He's got to do a lot, I think, bearing in mind what's happened, the results, the start to the season, where the fan base is in relation to him, the style of play and everything like that. For new owners to make him the figurehead, the man in charge as they lead into this bright new future, he's really got to make a statement. He's got to do more than just enough to be that man, to get that new contract, which he says he wants. This December is probably his last chance to do that, because with the challenging nature of the fixtures also comes opportunity. And for all that there may be people saying there's no way anybody would want to keep Dyche, of course he's going to go. On the flip side, you would say, as unlikely as it might be, if he was to go out and get a second consecutive Goodison derby win the last ever Goodison derby, and then pull out a win against an Arsenal or a Chelsea or a Man City, that's always going to make people stand up and take notice, because they're big results, aren't they? So, in terms of his imminent future, I think it's only ever going to be at risk if it looks like he can't do the bare minimum, which is keep Everton up. And had they lost yesterday, then I think some difficult conversations would probably have to start about whether he could do that. They didn't, they won, and therefore, he's in a much stronger position, as Everton are, and as I think we often acknowledge we as a fan base are now, because of that result.
Well, Chris, I want to talk about Dyche's team selection. We're getting a few comments about certain individual players, Decore, specifically Mangala, etc. I don't want to go overboard. It's literally one win after what has been a tough period. There's still a long way to go, as Joe's just mentioned. But for me, Sean Dyche got his team selection right. They're probably close to what is Everton's best team under Sean Dyche. Do you agree with that? Do you agree that he got a team selection right?
Well, yeah, I think if we're going to be picking holes out of that after a 4-0 win, I think he'd be totally vindicated. Obviously, it was interesting the fact that he didn't change the back 4, which he might have been severely tempted to do after the shambles at Manchester United. I thought that Vitaly Mikalenko might have been stepped out and perhaps Ashley Young switch over, which would give him an opportunity to either Nathan Patson or Seamus Coleman. That didn't happen. He kept faith with them. But Teodoro Mangala coming back in the centre mid, it's something that you and I think a lot of people had been calling for. So he came down, and his return meant that There were changes further forward with Abdoulaye Doucouré reverting to his number 10 role, as it were, and for the first time, Dyche predominantly on the right. I know he switched over late on when the changes were made. That was interesting. And Dyche, I think he was finding his feet in that new role, but he did draw the foul, which led to the free kick for the first goal. And obviously, I think he was dreadfully unfortunate with his own goal. His goal being ruled out there towards the end, and the fact that he did so well to follow that chance in on the rebound, and still not had a look at that with the replay, but I thought it was harsh. Say Calvert-Lewin had fouled the keeper, so he did well. I mean, Doucouré, thought he gave the ball away cheaply a bit at times, but I mean, it is where he's had his most prolonged success under Dyche.
Comment then, so Blue Mate says Mangala demonstrated why he has to start. He had a great game paired with Ghana. Brozia's cameo gives us hope too. Harrison had the wrong boots on. Just on Mangala, Joe, he's, for me, for the past couple of months, to be honest, when he's come in and he started games, he's looked like he's been the most capable and assured midfield, low block midfield performer. I know guys in the team most of the time anyway, but he'll have a good game, Mangala, and then for some reason Dyche will put Doucouré back as the holding midfielder. So he's been a bit stop and start. But for me now, that really should cement him as at least for now, until at least James Garner comes back in the team, the pairing of Garner and Mangala. That should be the two. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Mangala's looked relatively, he's been steady since he came to the club. I think that he is probably the most natural and most composed on the ball. He's the best option that Everton have in that midfield at the moment if they want to retain possession. So as long as he's got a little bit of space to work with, a little bit of time on the ball, and so long as he's got options that he can try and find to pass to, then it works. I still don't want to get too overboard because Everton have, had a very bad start to the season. It's only their third win, and that's probably the nature of the chop and change. As we see in the starting lineup, Dyche trying to work out what his best starting lineup is. But I think against lesser opposition, when you have the chance for Mangala to have a bit of time on the ball, then I think certainly he's the most effective they've got. I think of some of his better performances, and I think that first hour against Leicester, he was very good. And some of the others, I think when you need to be more aggressive in the middle, I'm not quite as sure, but obviously Doucouré comes with his limitations as well, so there perhaps isn't a perfect fit. But in a game like that, where someone like Mangala is going to get a bit of time and a bit of space against what ended up being quite a haphazard Wolves side, then having his composure on the ball is valuable.
Okay, Andy Whitty, I'll come to you on this, Chris, because you've just mentioned Doucouré giving the ball away, and I agree. He's not orthodox, is he? He is unorthodox
number 10 now,
to say the least. So Andy Whitty says, good win, but Ian, you said on X that Doucouré worked at number 10. He was awful again and should be nowhere near the first 11. Ndiaye was ineffective, stuck on the right until he went on the left wing and then ran in the centre. I mean, I think it's a tough one with Doucouré. I did say after the game that I felt like he was Everton are better suited when Doucouré plays as the number 10. I think there's a lot more balance, he's more effective. It just suits the way Sean Dyche wants to play. What do you agree with Andy? Should he be nowhere near the first 11, or it'd be very harsh to say that?
Yeah, I think that I understand both of his points what he's making, and there's a lot I generally agree with, but I think that is a bit harsh to say he should be nowhere near the first 11. He's been one of the most consistent performers, performing in big moments as well for Sean Dyche with those goals. I mean, when Sean Dyche first came in, we all wondered. He played predominantly 4-4-2 for the best part of a decade at Burnley. And we didn't know he was going to have this 4-5-1 formation. Doucouré had been out in the cold under Frank Lampard, not even training with the first team, so came in from nowhere, sort of knitting that midfield with attack, and the way he sort of gets up and down in that role. I mean, he's had those 2 hamstring injuries last season, which sort of slowed him down a bit in that respect. So we did wonder whether he would revert to that deeper role where he has naturally played for most of his career. Yeah, I think that's a bit harsh. I understand both where he's coming from with those points and the fact about Ndiaye. I think he'll just find his way in because he's been on the left for the most of the season. But like I said, he did win the free kick, and he was sort of getting used to that being on that other side of the pitch. I think with Ndiaye, a lot of the time he's going to be in and out of the game. It's those magic moments that he still produces. You know, he can be quiet for a while and there's got a lot of markers on him, but he often tends to do something. So yeah, I can understand where he's coming from with both those points. But personally, I think it's a bit harsh to say that about Doucouré, who's been one of Dyche's most trusted lieutenants, to be fair, for the best part of his reign.
I mean, the number 10 debate continues to roll on, Joe. You've obviously advocated for Iliman and Dyche to play that role, which he did, didn't he? Against
Brentford.
Thanks for that, Chris. And well, he interchanged, didn't he?
Yeah, he had 20 minutes there, didn't he?
So didn't quite work to probably what we'd want. Where do you want?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think you can rule out Ndiaye as number 10 based on 20 minutes at the start of that second half against Brentford. I think that with the number 10 role, I think it probably helps everybody if they take away what they want from a number 10 and view.
He's not a number 10 as
and
such.
View what Sean Dyche wants from a number 10. Okay, and that is where you get your explanation for what happens. Yeah. The reality is, and obviously we debated this long and hard, Sean Dyche doesn't see Iliman Ndiaye as number 10. He doesn't, or even in a central role. You know, I think there's a bit of an argument as to whether number 10 or support strike would be for Iliman Ndiaye. Sean Dyche doesn't see that. Sean Dyche doesn't think that Dwight McNeil is really a Premier League number 10. He thinks that with this midfield, he's trying to operate with square pegs in round holes. He's got an Everton side that he thinks wants to transition to something which is a bit more attackingly, a bit more coherent in attack than it has been in recent years. But he's struggling to work out how to do that, because I think for Dyche sees the number 10 perhaps as and this will sound strange to a lot of people, but as predominantly almost like a defensive role. He almost sees it as having like a number 6 just higher up the pitch, because the attributes that he values in that role, and people justifying their opinions of whether or not this is right or wrong, but I'm trying to explain what Sean Dyche thinks about this. You know, he wants someone that can be physical, that can lead the press, but do so with discipline, that can get back into and become almost like a third set midfielder whenever they're defending in need to, and someone that can understands the passing lanes and can block them off to stop sides from playing through the middle of Everton. That's what he wants from that role, and Doucouré is the best fit that he's got for that role out of those current players. We saw this at the start of the season against Brighton. He started Abdoulaye Doucouré back in that number 10 role. Now, I think it's a difficult one to try and get your head around, because I think we tend to see the number 10 as an attacking role, and the skills, the attributes that you tend to value in that are perhaps the skill, the trickery, the guile, the ability to go both ways, someone like Ndiaye from a creative perspective, or if not from that, and perhaps this is where Dyche is thinking on McNeil, the fact that you've got someone that can run for 95 minutes, because he is a big fan of McNeil from a fitness perspective, and someone who can hit a bouncing ball into the back of the net from 20 yards, which we know McNeil can do if it falls onto his right foot. So I think that where Dyche is a little bit stuck is trying to work out how to make that midfield effective, without just ending up putting 11 men or 10 men behind the ball, and not scoring, or not posing any goal threat, which they haven't done for recent times. So that's what he wants from his role, and that's what Doucouré is. Paddy Boyne used this term in The Athletic today, and he gets his spot on. It's his comfort blanket. It allows him to play somebody in that number 10 role without having to sacrifice too much from a defensive perspective, because Doucouré does that. And I think that's almost better to try and see Doucouré in that role. You're not asking him to kind of play a slide pass in behind the defence for Calvert-Lewin to run onto. You're not really expecting him to bang in goals from 25 yards every time. It's almost like a sacrificial position, I think, in the Sean Dyche textbook. It's a player that goes out and almost martyrs himself for the team. And I think that's actually what Doucouré, when he's on it, is actually very good at. He's very good at just almost playing the role of a player and a half. He kind of does both a number 10's job and a third centre midfielder's job. So he gives you that extra solidity in defence and also that extra discipline. And as we have seen, certainly in the first year of Dyche's role, he does pop up with big goals and big moments every now and then. Now the problem with Doucouré is obviously he's getting a little bit older. He's the other side of a couple of hamstring injuries, and he's playing in a side which is still quite dysfunctional, because Dyche still hasn't solved his problem out on the wings. Putting Doucouré there will McNeil's set-piece delivery was very, very good yesterday, but his impact from open play still was probably a little bit questionable. You've got Ndiaye, who's clearly too good to not start, but if Sean Dyche doesn't see him in a central role, where do you start? And that's clearly something else that is a problem that is still unresolved at this stage. But I think that yesterday we saw Sean Dyche in a big game going back to what he is most comfortable with, and partly because Everton were better, and partly Wolves didn't take their chances, and partly Wolves being a mess. Like it got him through that, and it got Everton a big win at a big time.
Yeah, I think it's what he's probably most comfortable with, but it's probably what's worked as best for him in the past.
Well,
as
it
well.
has, yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, that's it. And
I don't think it's necessarily, and might take a bit of flack here because someone said, well, he picks his favourites. I don't think it's necessarily him picking his favourites. It is literally just, that's worked well in the past. We tried to do something different with Ndiaye, McNeil in the middle, etc. But it's clearly not worked how he would like to have worked. We're playing a relegation rival in Wolves, who we know are not going to have the quality of a Liverpool, City, United, Chelsea, whatever. So it could be a lot more effective if we play in Doucouré as the second striker / number 10. And I think that, I'll be honest, he's been proved right.
It's Dyche being pragmatic, isn't it? And he's a defensive coach. Like he goes in, that's how he approaches games, to try and be tight and then take advantage of the moments that come Everton's way, and also to be physical. And Doucouré in that role helps in both facets, and also then gives you the freedom to play Mangala alongside Guy. So you get both aspects of their game in there as well. And I think and if this is a problem perhaps at the start of the season, where this works, but it only works to a point. Like it works in one-off games, and it tends to work against teams that either are struggling, are disorganised, or teams that just aren't on it as much. I mean, when you look at that 5-1 win over Brighton or the 3-1 win at Brentford, both games that Doucouré was key in that number 10 role, a lot of it just came from the fact that Everton just absolutely blitzed these teams from the start. They just weren't prepared for them. You got teams maybe kind of meandering along in mid-table for a season, not with anything to play for, and all of a sudden Everton find that assertiveness and the aggressiveness that they need because they need a big win, and they just blitz a team out in the first 15 minutes. That's where Doucouré's been so effective. The problem is when you come up against better sides, and the problem is when you're trying to create something that's a bit more sustainable. And I think at the start of this season, Everton were in a position where they, without the deductions, they've got 48 points last season. I think that Dyche says a lot about this season was never going to be easy and things like that. Everton maybe overperformed a little bit last season, but I think everybody was completely justified, especially with the signings that were made, to believe that Everton might be a little bit better than a relegation battle this season in some, certainly from an attacking perspective, take their game forward a little bit. But the problem is that's what the problem has been this season. If you keep Doucouré in that role, well, we saw in the first game against Brighton, it's all well and good in some of these games like last night, but against better sides, when you only get small glimpses of players, small opportunities where a player like in your number 10 role is going to get a bit of time and space on the ball or on the counter-attack, they need to have a bit of quality, they need to have a bit more quality, a bit more ruthlessness, a bit more guile, and Doucouré doesn't quite have that. So it's when you're then trying to expand into becoming, from a lower mid-table side or a relegation side to mid-table and then go on, that's where you hit your limitations, I think. And almost Everton and Dyche kind of got caught in that trap at the beginning of the season where they tried to run before they could walk, and that's where the problem is, because in an ideal world, some people might say McNeil, I would say Ndiaye in a central role over 10 as support striker, but you need everything, you need the foundations behind you to be so much more firmer to be able to do that. And when Everton do put those players in those positions, I think from a Dyche perspective, and we can maybe have a different debate about how he sets up behind them, but they're sacrificing too much defensively in the hope of becoming better in the attack. And in the end, they get neither, and you end up with these mad 3-2 defeat to Bournemouth, or conceding the goals they did against Villa, or the goals they did against Spurs or Brighton.
I don't think it's going to work every single time, because if it did, then Everton will be further up the table. But I think that's as close as you're going to get to probably Sean Dyche's best team. Moving on to Calvert-Lewin then, Chris. He thought he'd got a brace, but it turns out it was Craig Dawson who got the own goal brace.
Unfair. I don't know. You know, last season, I did about this with my analysis this morning. Obviously, he had his 23 goal.
I know what you're going to say.
Sorry, 23 game drought. I mean, the goal disallowed at Spurs away. Then he had the one that came off Jack Harrison. That's what I mean. If it's your own teammate, I guess it's got to go to Harrison, hasn't it? I mean, who didn't have his shooting boots on when he came on last night, unfortunately. But if you're there or thereabouts, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a bit too sort of sentimental here now, but yeah, Craig Dawson doesn't want those credited to him. Calvert-Lewin wants them. Dawson doesn't want them.
Has it
Give
been
him to the
confirmed?
striker. I don't know. I think last night they were both given to Dawson, weren't they? As Oggy, a brace of Oggies. He's now creeping up behind Dwight McNeil as Everton's joint second top scorer. So Calvert-Lewin seems to have the bit between his teeth after being dropped at Old Trafford there for Beto, so coming straight back into the side. I did say, I said after the weekend, I did wonder with these brace of home games on the horizon in the space of a week, was part of it, to give Calvert-Lewin a bit of a kick up the backside, but also give him a bit of a breather as well. So, yeah, he looked more on it. Again, he had a chance, I wouldn't say it was 1-on-1, but he was through on the keeper, thought he should have done better. And I thought it was harsh to say he'd fouled the keeper. I need to have another look at that one maybe, but from what I saw last night, I'd give the attacking team, not because it's Everton, whether it's anyone, should be perhaps given the benefit of the doubt there. But yeah, give them to Calvert-Lewin. I don't think he will get them, but and that's really harsh for him, because like all centre forwards, he's judged on his goals. But I thought he could be a lot pleased with his contributions last night, and even if it's some sort of crumbs of comfort for him, even if he doesn't obviously get credited with those goals, he was getting on the end of chances, which is a big thing because he's not been doing that. For whatever we think about Beto, and he's a far less polished performer, Beto seems to get on the end of chances more than Calvert-Lewin in recent times, and Calvert-Lewin was sort of there or thereabouts and wreaking havoc in their box.
Interesting that Chris said he seems to have the bit between his teeth because, let's face it, his body language not been great the past couple of weeks, Joe, and he's definitely been off his game. Is it a coincidence that we've got a striker who was on the bench who came on in Broja, who's hopefully going to add a little bit of competition for the next couple of weeks at least?
Yeah, I felt a degree of sympathy for Dominic Calvert-Lewin in recent weeks because he's been bereft of service, he's been isolated. We've talked long and hard about Everton, struggling to have any kind of coherent attack. Well, he is obviously the one that suffers from that. He's missed chances when they have come his way. He hasn't had many of them. Yesterday, I thought we saw Dominic Calvert-Lewin at his best in terms of what he does for the team. He won some. Everton's obviously main threat. All their goals came from set pieces, and he won several of the free kicks that led to the chaos in the Wolves box that the team capitalised on. He was just. He was just quicker. He was sharper, and he was a bit more. He had a bit more intense, a bit more assertiveness about him. He's really unfortunate not to come away with those goals. Look, I mean, written about this a lot. I think the hope from Everton has always been that Armando Broja comes in, and obviously Dyche is increasing amid the goal scoring struggles of recent weeks. Dyche has started to look towards Broja and Chimiti as potential solutions to the problems. Now, I mean, that's a lot to ask because these are two players that don't really have a track record of scoring consistently in the Premier League over recent seasons. Yusuf Chimiti hasn't scored in the Premier League. His only Premier League experience was with the games he was coming on at the end, and obviously the start against Brentford last season. So albeit he had a good start to pre-season, he's still someone that I think in a stronger side you would probably be looking to loan out for the second half of the season, get some proper senior football behind him to maybe then make an assessment as to where he lies going into the summer and next season. Broja had that good run at Southampton, but since then has struggled with injuries. Didn't score a goal for Fulham when he went on loan there last season, but he's clearly a very, very talented player, and the question is whether or not the talent has survived the last set of injuries that he had. The dynamic, I say this is something I've written a lot about, the dynamic between him and Dominic Calvert-Lewin was always going to be very, very interesting, because really there's an argument to say because Dominic Calvert-Lewin hasn't signed that new contract that was offered to him in the summer, and because Everton have the option to make Broja permanently, Broja is probably ahead of Calvert-Lewin in that battle to become the striker, the talismanic striker that leads Everton into this bright new future. Who wouldn't want that as a player? But obviously he's got a lot to do to justify that big price tag. obviously he'll want to do it, and if him coming back pushes up Calvert-Lewin's performances as well, because Calvert-Lewin knows that, well, these two things. He'll either get to a point where he wants to actually sign again for Everton, in which case he's got to convince him of his worth and fight off against the challenge from Breuer, or he's got to prove that a suitor that wants to take him on a free in the summer he's worth the money. So he needs to step up and get goals, whichever his ambitions are. He hasn't been doing that so far. So it's just a really interesting dynamic between the two of them. And Breuer came on and looked really good last night. He could have had a hat-trick of assists, really. He looked strong. He was holding off defenders. He looked quick, didn't he? He looked skillful. He looked a nuisance. We know the Freakins are open to sign a marquee striker signing, because they've done that twice with Dybala and Lukaku at Roma. And Breuer would be, if Breuer warrants it because of his performances over the course of the season, then he could be that player. He's got a chance to make a statement for that case for that ambition. So it's going to be really, really interesting. It probably was no surprise, because I think, as I say, the hope has been that having the two of them playing off against each other, Dyche is unlikely to move to a straight two up front. So they're going to be competing against each other. They've both got their own self-interest to think about, because they've both got their futures to think about. And for both of them to have the best chance of getting whatever move they want in the summer, well, they need to be scoring goals. And to score goals, need to be playing. So hopefully that competition will drive up standards for both of the players. And I think we saw, and that was almost my big takeaway from last night. That's what I led my match report on, actually. We know all the stuff about, a bit of pressure being relieved on Dyche and things like that, and 5 points clear the relegation zone. But all of a sudden, they finally rediscovered their touch from set pieces, which had just been missing. And a great time to do so, because obviously they were so potent from set pieces in the derby win last season. But all of a sudden, you've got a side that has gone from not scoring a goal in 6 weeks and in about 6 hours of football, to all of a sudden the side that looks like it's got two strikers that might be in form and fighting each other to prove their value. I mean, the fixtures are a tough run of fixtures for those players to kind of, carry on and making their case. But it's a good thing for Everton.
I hadn't seen too much of how we pronounce his name, Breuer or Breuer.
I think it's Breuer. I mean, Chris, every time he says it, says Breuer. Joe says it's Breuer.
You do say that, to be fair.
So I was still calling Bernard for the first season.
Not as bad as Dyche. He still calls Lindstrom Jasper.
Okay. AB he calls Breuer.
He's removed himself from the debate, hasn't he?
Okay, well, I've not seen much of AB before, but he's an absolute unit.
He's a chest, isn't he?
He's huge.
Oh yeah, Lindstrom, one of his first involvements last night was when Lindstrom overhit that pass to him, wasn't it? And obviously 4-0 up, he's a player that's coming back from injury. 5 minutes to go. Yeah. Doesn't need to chase that lost course, but he did, didn't he? I mean, he ran it, he kept it in, and he held off Totti with ease, didn't he? And then still found Lindstrom, who could then find Harrison. That was a really promising performance. That was. Definitely. I watched him for the under-21s against Forest on Friday, and that was a game that Everton under-21s really struggled in. And he looked a bit sore coming off, so I kind of didn't have too much expectations when I saw him on the bench yesterday. But I mean, he looked good, which is good. So
absolutely, fingers crossed he stays fit. Chris, I guess it's still nice to focus on the positives, and one positive from last night, for probably the last couple of months really, has been Ashley Young.
Yeah.
Really good 20-yard free kick, which crept in. I don't know whether it went through the wall or just round the wall, but the keeper was probably unsighted. But I'll be the first to hold my hands up and say, I didn't think Ashley Young would find a place in Everton's team this season. I've always said that Coleman was probably the best suited player. We've obviously got Patterson on his way back, to the team and fitness and stuff like that. But he's proven me wrong. He's certainly probably proven a lot of Everton fans wrong. Yeah,
big part of my analysis this morning. Who's the daddy? Ashley Young, the ultimate competitive dad. He's even older than Joe Thomas. He's not quite as old as me, but the oldest scorer in Everton's entire history. Poor old Wally Fielding, he's had that since 1958. And I think the week, I mean, it was certainly the month that Neville Southall was born, September 1958. He's had that, poor old Wally, and Ashley Young has usurped him now. Gary O'Neill wasn't happy with that wall. He said it was in the wrong place, and he thought it was very soft. But
so he's critical of his players.
Yeah, he was. He was very. He would say that, wouldn't he? Ashley Young.
He was critical of his players, but he came out and was very resounding in the responsibility that he took for Wolves' current play. That was quite interesting, wasn't it?
Well, I think he had to be fair. Yeah, it was an interesting piece. If you want to see that about the whole dynamic and him and the Wolves supporters. But Ashley Young, it's his first Premier League goal at Goodison. I think we were talking about this and with late comebacks for Villa in 2008. So 16 years to the month since his last Premier League goal at Goodison, and he's still doing it. He's threatening that father versus son. Cranking up the pressure on Darren Ferguson there, Peter Ripper, pick his son for the FA Cup tie, because I think Young Junior's only actually played 27 minutes in the EFL Trophy match so far in senior football. So. It's a great story. I mean, a lot of people would say, "Oh, he's one of the Dyche favourites." The fact that they played together in the same Watford side when Young was a teenager all those years ago, former teammates. But he was Dyche's first signing after coming to the club, and he's been. You might say, "Well, he's just picking one of his mates up on a free transfer," but I think he's been totally vindicated, and great sort of spirit to be showing. To have that sort of. It's not just the physicality of playing at that level, but also I think Dyche has said you've got to have that edge to you to be still competing at that level, because it's not just the fitness, it's being able to get up every day and still do that. And he's probably been arguably Everton's most consistent performer in what has been a disappointing season so far.
What do you put it down to then, Chris? Because certainly, I think people will be justified in the criticism of Ashley Young, certainly last season. He was obviously sent off in the derby, wasn't he? He would ultimately get sent off in silly moments, and he always seemed to be beaten by the left winger for the opposition and stuff like that. You can't really put it down to the form of the team, because we've been we've been shocking. It's not as if like his resurgence comes because the team's playing well. I don't know whether it is just because he's the experience, he's the older guy in the team. He can stand up and be countered, and I don't know. I really don't know what to put it down to.
Yeah, maybe it's just a culmination of all those good habits over a career spent at the top. Let's not forget he was an England international. They obviously at Manchester United for a long time when they were doing well. He's played over in Italy for Inter. He's kind of just putting all that together. I don't know why it wasn't happening for him in his early days. Like you say, at Everton, there was a lot of horrific mistakes, really, and sort of things you wouldn't expect from a grizzled veteran. You don't expect him to get up and down the wing for 90 minutes at that age, but you expect him to use that nous and have that responsibility of a long career at the top. So I don't know why it was missing early on for him at Everton, but he's just going back to all those great habits that he's accumulated over such a long period of time, and what a great professional. Makes you even wonder, for all the changes that you could be seeing this season, at the end of the season, and possibly even change your manager as well. It's not entirely the realms of fantasy to think that he could be there at a new stadium, age 40. I mean, it's not that far fetched an idea, because you can't see him slowing down that much. I mean, I raised a Carlo Ancelotti quizzical eyebrow at Carlo himself when he said that Seamus Coleman could be playing in the Premier League at 40, because obviously Costa Curta, Maldini, etc. done that for him at Milan. It's very different in the Premier League, but if anyone's going to be doing it, it'd be Ashley Young.
Your man of the match, or did Mangala nip in there ahead of Ashley Young, or was it a third option?
I mean, I thought Pickford was a big save from Cunha.
He's doing that.
I knew that was coming.
And Strand Larsen at 1-0. Like the big saves at big moments.
Wow.
No, I'm joking. Just winding you up. Young was good. McNeil's performance was such an interesting one to try and judge, because obviously in open play, like I say, I thought he struggled a little bit, but I mean, those set piece deliveries, like trying to work out why Everton was so good at attacking set pieces, then went so bad and all of a sudden became good again last night. I've got no idea, because all I've seen throughout the whole time of the Dyche is McNeil back post to Tarkowski just started working again last night, didn't it? So I mean, hopefully that's That's a good sign. I mean, I asked Dyche about it after the game, and he was talking about the commitment to score. The commitment to score. That's what it was. I think what you're probably trying to hint at is a bit more bravery to go after it, a bit more bravery and a bit more desire. Why that's been lacking for so long, if that is the case, then that's a legitimate question to ask, but it was good to see. Mangala played well, didn't he? And it was nice seeing him come off. Obviously, he got a big ovation, and it was nice because obviously he went off behind the goal, so watched him walk along the Gladys, and then the main stand, and saw him kind of people asking for his photos. He was smiling and going and shaking hands and things with supporters on the way out. I just think that Goodison's a very difficult place for everyone with Everton and where they currently are and have been over the last few years. We've had probably more difficult and sobering moments and chastening moments than we have had celebrations, and even most of the celebrations have come, you think Bournemouth, you think Crystal Palace, with the caveat that they're celebrating survival when Everton should really have far loftier ambitions. So when you get those moments, it's nice that people are able to kind of take advantage of them, and it was great to see that from Mangala, I thought. Last night. But young good as well. He's done very well. I mean, he's had some week, hasn't he? Because, as difficult as Sunday was, he had a standing ovation at Old Trafford, one of his former clubs, drawn against his son in the FA Cup on Monday, and then, puts in that free kick and gets a man of match display, which was justified last night. So, I think it's, it's all about attitude, really, isn't it? And it's, like Chris says, it's the application of knowledge. We've seen that Coleman can still, when Coleman's fit, can still often do a job at fullback, even though the pace has gone from his legs, just because he has the guile. He knows what a winger's going to try and do, and is very good at stopping it. But his revival story is speak about Mangala, saying hello to fans there. Yes, I was in the stands in Goodison before the game, and as the rain was pouring down, saw Michael Keane, who's obviously injured at the moment, just walking down the pitch side, and he had a similar experience where he had fans calling for him to come and take photos, and he went down, took them. It was a nice moment, and I just keep thinking back to those two. And although it's been a disappointing and a difficult start to the season for Everton, the redemption of those two players is showing. And I think this is where I think counters a lot of what Dyche kind of says about the supporters, and it doesn't have a go at the supporters or anything like that. But when he talks about a nervous Goodison and things like that, and when you see opposition players and managers talk about, almost question how much of a boost the fans can provide sometimes, because obviously they are difficult times at Goodison at the moment. I just think it just puts pay to all of that, really. This is a fan base that's desperate to have things to celebrate, desperate to have players and managers and games and results to celebrate and moments to celebrate. It takes every opportunity it can do to make the most of the good times when they come, and we saw that last night. 4-0 up against Wolves. There was no, during that, once Everton got the second and from beyond there was no, it's still been a bad start to the season, or Wolves are still causing problems or anything like that. It was like, let's enjoy this moment and let's give the players their flowers whilst we can.
I think that's the thing, you can't. I'm not going to be negative after the win. Like I'm just not. There's still going to be fans out there critical of Dyche and the team.
The win doesn't make everything that we've been saying over the past few months wrong. No. Does it?
No, but I'm just not going to be. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be negative after the win. We've got a tough period coming up. As many points as possible is probably a bonus in this period. It's irrelevant, this, Chris, now because of the result, but probably for my peace of mind, the VAR offside decision. What did you make of it? I'm just going to read out the terminology of what why the reason it was disallowed. Mangala was in an offside position and interfered with an opponent, and recommended an on-field review. Yeah. I don't think there's any denying that he was in an offside position when the ball was kicked. Is he interfering with play? Is he stopping an opposition defender getting to James Tarkowski for you?
There's a lot of I was going to say similarities, but differences with Southampton had that goal disallowed at Brighton, and there was a big controversy over that because of the amount of time it took. And then, but what happened there was the attacking player went right across the goalkeeper, and that was deemed to be interfering with play. Whereas Mangala, if he was interfering, was interfering with a player who wasn't sort of pivotal in the action. There was Tarkowski getting above several markers at the back post, and it was also something in your peripheral vision. So for me, I don't think it should have been disallowed. I don't think there's enough interference there in the actual direct moment of what's actually going on with that goal. I mean, if we're going to be like that, probably every goal ever scored ever. Are you gonna be like saying that somebody somewhere is doing something? So for me,
that's the whole point of the offside rule, though, isn't it? You can be in an offside position when the ball's kicked, but doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be offside.
He was offside. I think nobody's disputing that. But is it the interfering? And the fact that all the action's happening with Tarkowski and what's round him on the back post, that's the focus for me. The same way as with the Southampton goal, it was disallowed at Brighton. That was because the player went right in front of the keeper's eye line. That's why he was interfering. So for me, it was harsh, and I'm not saying that because it was Everton. And I just think it is a grey area. But for me to have a goal chalked, I think we're just very fortunate that we're talking after a 4-0 win here. Similarly with the Ndiaye goal, that was disallowed. If either of those had come in a game that had been close, it'd been like real fume this morning, and justifiably so, in my opinion.
Okay, let's just read out some questions before we finish off. Chris is not on tomorrow's show, just a reminder for those listening that me, Joe and Gav will be previewing the last ever Goodison Merseyside derby, and Chris is going to give his prediction
in the Premier League,
in the Premier League.
We've got to in case they meet each other in the FA Cup,
be Peterborough, I guess. Stephen Coulthard says, we definitely needed that, gives us a bit of breathing space for now. Andy Walker, had a crazy dream last night, we smashed Wolves 5-0. Must be coming down with something, going back to bed. Ian the Blue says we played a poor Wolves side FFS. I mean, wow. I just can't be negative after a win.
I mean, he's right. They did play a poor Wolves side, but like that. But that's it. You know, the task that Dyche sees himself as being set this season is to make sure he finishes above 3 other teams, and making sure Everton aren't one of the worst 3 teams in the league is something that he did last night. So
and Dyche's tenure as an Everton manager has been littered with victories over teams lower in the table than Everton, and Wolves are certainly one of them. I know we've lost against Southampton and stuff, but obviously that's where the criticism has come from. Where are we? We are 54 minutes in. We'll finish off then and go for prediction. Chris, do you want to reveal a stat that we were talking about before if people don't know about the Goodison Merseyside derby?
Go on then. Yeah, so if this isn't an incentive, I don't know if anything is. I mean, Ian actually mooted it, and then I went and looked it up in the records, and you were correct, yeah. So going into the last ever Premier League Merseyside derby, I think in all previous Goodison meetings between Everton and Liverpool, they're level on wins. So I think it was 41 each. Yeah. So yeah, it's basically no pressure, lads. You're playing on basically 130 years of football come Saturday.
Good way of putting it.
Yeah. So I mean, it should be obviously a huge incentive anyway for any Everton player to go out and win the last ever Merseyside derby at Goodison in the Premier League. But probably will be obviously the last ever Merseyside derby, you'd imagine. So yeah, it's on a knife edge in that respect, and there's so much to play for. Never mind Liverpool going for the league, and obviously Everton making sure they stay above relegation trouble. I mean, I was saying to Joe when Liverpool were losing last night, I mean, how many points would that put Everton behind Liverpool now? A bit tongue in cheek, but there's plenty to play for. It's there are always huge occasions, but this one bigger than most.
So are you going to go with an Everton win then, or?
Yeah, saying all that, yeah, it better be 1-0 Everton.
Well, at least it's a positive prediction. Stay tuned for tomorrow's show. We're going to do it live around 11:30. Me, Gav, and Joe will give our predictions. Sure, we'll talk a lot of things as well as team selection, etc. So, yeah. Any final thoughts, Joe, before we finish off?
Just enjoy this. Enjoy this moment.
The next 48 hours.
And keep an eye on the coverage, because I'll be up at Finch Farm later for the pre-derby press conference, 3:45 for those that are listening live.
Yeah, bit of a later one than usual, isn't it? Usually 1:30, so 3:45.
Yeah, right, 3:45, yeah.
Sounds cool. All right, well, this has all been that is all for today's show. Sorry. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and drop us some 5-star reviews on Apple and Spotify. Most importantly, enjoy your day. I've been Ian Croll, joined by Joe Thomas and Chris Beesley, And this has been the Royal Blue Podcast.